This is a homage beat.
Was it leaves me speechless. That it's accessible,
Yeah.
to the point where, it makes you uncomfortable when you walk into a home, and there's, pills and alcohol and everything, and people are exchanging money, and you're like, what in the world is going on? But I definitely have a lot of personal and professional experiences, and even in college, even in college in undergrad, I had friends, my freshman and sophomore year, that now that I look back on it, that were functioning alcoholics. And they would get mad at me, for saying, well, girl, you might need to, calm down on that, or you might need to get help. You might need to seek out, counseling services on campus, because that you're suppressing other things. And so I was kind of using my degree when I was in college, but I definitely do have a lot of personal and both professional experiences in that.
Me, I don't have necessarily any professional, but definitely personally, I can honestly say that it shaped how I've lived. I've said it on the podcast several times before that I didn't grow with my biological father. He was in and out of jail, and just a couple years back, even preparing for the book, I knew I always wanted to just have a conversation with him, and I was able to, and get it recorded on camera, and even throw it up on YouTube where I could just have a real open, honest conversation with my father. Because you just hear things, and I always applaud my mother. She never like badmouthed him or anything like that. But and like you said, as you get older, you start to be more perceptive of things. Parents that were never married or anything like that, and my mother never kept me from that side of the family. But I could tell that my father's side of the family were a little bit cautious, because my father, my grandfather always told me, watch the company that you keep, watch the company that you keep, and I would hear him, but as I got older, and especially listening to my father talk. It's because he didn't keep the right crowd, that it led him down a path that he didn't want to go, where he was just into drugs. I don't know to what extent. Either just selling or using or both. I'm not sure, but he was heavily involved in just drug culture. And I'll get to this later, but especially in our community where it's almost glorified, like I saw the consequences of it, and it's like I knew I didn't want to go down that route. I think just me personally, I never liked the idea of not being in control. So that always kind of bugged me out a little bit. But just looking back at my life, that was somewhat of a deterrent, just seeing how that affected my father's life. And just saying, I don't think I want to go down.
I will share. When I was doing therapy, I realized that treating individuals who were abusing substances was not my gift. And, I remember telling my supervisor, I was like, I can do anything. I can go to roach infested houses. I can do, children who have been molested. I could do sex offenders. I could do all of this stuff. But there's something about working with, adults, who, were alcoholics and, quote unquote crackheads that I just didn't get. And I remember something that was very profound, and I still carry it with me today, is that she said, Shirnetta, she said, I want you to think about one traumatic experience in your life that you have had. I want you to think about a time that was very dark and that was very low for you. And she said, what skills did you have at that time? What were the coping skills that you were able to use at that time? Who poured into you at that time? And I was able to say, oh, my grandmother, I was a cheerleader, I did this. But, what she said to me was that, these individuals in this room, referring to adults who had been court ordered, teenagers, middle schoolers who were, involved in substance abuse therapy, was they didn't have that. They didn't have those skills. They didn't have, that loving grandmother. They didn't have that mom or that father there. They didn't have the ability in their brain psychologically to be able to bounce back or to have that level of resilience not to turn to drugs. So for me, that was something that was very profound. And it was a humbling moment for me because it made me realize how privileged I really was. So yeah.
No, that is very good. And just like going back to like why would someone engage in drug abuse?
Yeah.
And there could be other reasons why. And I just essentially highlighted three. I say one may abuse drugs because it alters their mood to sell. And then I say for other nefarious purposes, which I'll get to later. And we've been talking a little bit about tobacco and alcohol. But there's essentially three types of classifications for drugs. We've got your depressants, your stimulants, and your hallucinogens. Your depressants are usually alcohol and marijuana, codeine. The stimulants, which can boost alertness and attention. Two most common ones are caffeine and nicotine.
Yeah.
And then hallucinogens are those stimulants that have psychedelic effects.
Yes.
These drugs have caused the users to like see images, hear sounds, feel sensations that are not real. These examples include LSD, mushrooms, and PCP. And just on those definitions alone, I'm like, I'm not messing with that. Like, I think I'm at an even keel where I don't need that. But there's so many people who do need these drugs for medicinal reasons, but other times they just use them for, like I said, just to alter their mood, just to get high or whatever it may be, just to drink alcohol just because it relaxes them or whatever the case is. That people do drugs, and you were talking about it before. Just in our community, it's so funny because when you were talking about Percocets, I just started thinking about a Future song. But especially in our culture,
Brandon, I'm
with
surprised you knew
drugs.
that song.
Oh, come on now. Don't start on me. Oh man, because I was preaching on Sunday. But why do you think in our culture that we glorify drugs? Like I said, we hear it in our music, we see it in TV. Especially in our community, like the drug dealers, like we look at him and we applaud. I know like the common adage now is like we respected the drug dealer back then, and now with the new cast, we glorify for the drug user. But I'm still from the 80s, 89,
Yeah.
1 year removed from the 90s, but I'm claiming the 80s. But we see that and we like, why are we glorifying this when we see the results? Why do you think we glorify
You know what? I think that it's very simple. I think we glorify drugs because we don't glorify God.
Okay.
You know what I mean? I know that, scripture, I'm not a Bible scholar, I'm sitting with a Bible scholar, but, I know that scripture talks about, us, not fighting against physical things, but us fighting against spiritual things. And I can honestly say that, I think one of the main reasons why, specifically the African American community glorifies substances and drugs is simply because they don't know how to combat those things that they're fighting against. I remember going to communities, high-rise projects, where I would feel the heaviness when I drove up. People would walk past me and not even know that they're living. You know what I mean? And so I really felt like, to answer that question, I feel like that people, they're just lost. They're lost, and the only way to feel good, to have that satisfaction, is to get high, is to get drunk, is to pass out, is to put needles in your throat because your veins on your arms, have no other where, to use them. And so I want to get this high because I don't want to deal with life. I want to suppress life if I do want to deal with it, and I don't know how to deal with it. So I think that, people glorify drugs because they don't glorify God.
What about, I would definitely agree with that. What about, because that it's somewhat lucrative. We look at those, especially those who we have modeled before us. We value money,
Yeah.
and
Oh, yeah.
those were the people who were getting the money.
Yeah.
You know, like again, we were talking about it before, where we look at a movie like Scarface.
Yeah.
You know, and we make the millions and millions.
Yeah.
Because I say, in realizing one's desire to use drugs to alter one's mood, there are those who capitalize on this. Many of these drugs are illegal, therefore they get sold illegally. Drug trafficking is an extremely lucrative business, grossing billions of dollars worldwide. In particular, drug trafficking in Mexico is worth over $50 billion per year. These figures reveal how desperate one is for these illegal drugs. Therefore, where there is a demand, one supplies it. The distribution of illegal drugs runs rampant throughout our society, and I think because it always like bugs me, especially the dudes who is like rapping and like talking about drugs. And I'm like, if you were that like good at it, why'd you turn to rapping?
Yeah.
So clearly, it wasn't that profitable. For you, but yet I understand. You know, I'm talking about what I used to do. I think it's the common argument, but it's never like, man, because I remember. I don't know if you've heard of the Clips. With Malice and Pusha T.
Yeah.
And Malice got saved. He's no Malice now, but he would say like I would have to deal with the reality that I sold these drugs to my own family members.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like that tension, and I talk about it even further on, where it's like, in order for you to sell a drug, you've got to sell it to someone in your community, and you literally killing your community by giving these individuals drugs. And then when you have those moments of clarity, you're like, man, I can't believe I actually did this just to get a buck in my pocket, even though I understand self-preservation, which again I talk about. But it's like, that's got to weigh on you.
Yeah.
And it's like you did that because we talk about this idea of selling your soul. It's like the ultimate selling out your community, selling your soul.
Yeah.
You know, and I get you've got to eat yourself, but to what extent will you go to profit off of another individual? And I say this, clearly there's no justification for using or selling drugs. However, one could or should sympathize with those who use drugs to cope with life, as you were mentioning before. In addition, those who sell drugs do so because they feel it's their only option.
Yeah.
You know, it's easy for someone who is not from our cultural context to look from the outside in and be critical, and not to say that we shouldn't, but at least we understand.
Yeah.
Most of those critics from the outside looking in, they don't even understand.
Right.
I say those who sell drugs are rightly vilified, but it is necessary to view things from their perspective. Again, there is no excuse for their actions, but their actions are grounded in logic. In order to provide one for oneself, one must have a job.
Yeah.
If one can't get a job, one will be unable to provide for oneself. If one can get an illegal job, one will be able to provide. Therefore, selling drugs is the natural response of self-preservation when there are no perceived alternatives. I'm not trying to give a drug dealer out, but I get their logic.
Yeah.
They can't go and get a job, you know, so it's like they turn to the next best thing. It's easier.
Yeah.
Money's quicker. You know, everybody else is doing it.
Yeah.
You know, so it's the logical alternative, and that's what I was saying before. And where I grew up, and thank God that I grew up with my stepfather. And I hate saying stepfather because he was the man who raised me. I know him my whole life, but it's like I grew up in New York, and I'm sure it's easily accessible where we were. But my parents never had me in those environments. You know, I never had to see it as you've seen it played out in front of me. You know, I've heard things, but I've never had anyone come up to me. And I knew not to even go searching it out.
Right.
But it's like so many people who went to school with me, they couldn't avoid it.
Yeah.
You know, they would have to engage in some sort of fashion, and it's like, it's just easy, quick money.
And I will say too, you know, I think that another misconception is that people often forget about mothers who are pregnant who are using substances. You know, I've worked with teenage girls, you know, who were smoking weed 8 months pregnant. So, you know, you have mothers, you know, who are giving birth to children addicted